What's going on, everybody? Ronnie DiMaggio here, product specialist at BMW of Morristown, and in today's video we are doing a walk around and overview with this 2022 BMW Z4 M40i. So the Z4 historically, all the Z cars in the BMW lineup, the Z1, the Z3, the Z8, and now the Z4 have always been small two-seat roadster sports car type of cars, and the Z4 for 22 carries that on. So you have two seats, you have rear wheel drive, and you have an inline six under the hood. It's the classic BMW sports car formula. The Z4 can be had in two different trims. You have the S-Drive 30i, which is a 4-cylinder model, and then you have what we have here, the M40i, which is, like I said, an inline six, in this case a turbocharged inline six. So the Z4 has always been a really cool car in the BMW lineup. All the Z cars have kind of their interesting quirks that set them apart from everything else in the lineup. As you'll see when we go inside of the Z4, and even by the exterior styling, it has a lot of unique touches that are subtle but different from everything else in the BMW lineup that kind of set it apart, make it feel like a very standout special car. So we are going to go over the exterior styling, the drivetrain components, as well as the interior and trunk space. So let's get started by popping the hood to take a look at the engine here in the Z4. So this is BMW's B58. That is a 3-liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder engine that is exclusive to the M40. As I said, the S-Drive 30 comes with a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo. So the M40 with its 6-cylinder makes 382 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque. It is paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission as the sole transmission option. For now, at least. We'll see if that changes at any point in the future. Maybe they'll throw us a bone and give us a 3-pedal option, but for now, just the ZF8, and it is a great transmission and a great engine. Together, they work fantastically. So the Z4 is a pretty light car by modern standards, only 3,400 pounds or so, and with 382 horsepower, that is enough to give you a below 4 second 0 to 60 time, so 3.9 seconds to 60 miles per hour for the Z4, which is really impressive, and I love to see that BMW is still keeping the Z4 lightweight and offering it with an inline six, which is kind of the Z car formula. As the hood is up right now, I just want to point out to you guys how big of a piece this hood is. I mean, pretty small car the Z4 is. It is a small car, but this hood is absolutely gigantic. It goes all the way to the edges of the fender, so there's no line like a lot of hoods will cut right here. This car goes all the way to the edge of the fender, so you have this plastic kind of protecting the tire, but if that weren't there, you'd be looking at the top of some Michelin Pilot Super Sports, which would be pretty cool, but BMW covered it up, which does make sense. Anyway, really big hood, and that, as we'll talk about, emphasizes the proportions of this car. The Z4, if you're new to automotive design and kind of how cars tend to look based on their drivetrains, is a perfect example of what a rear-wheel drive proportioned car should look like. As we walk around the car, I'll point those things out to you guys, but really well-proportioned long hood, short cabin, and short overhang in the back. So great-looking car. But that is the powertrain. Let's start talking a little bit about styling. So as you can see up front in the Z4, we have relatively shallow kidney grills, like they don't extend very far up and down, north-south, so to speak, but the east to west, left to right is a pretty big gap. They are pretty prominent kidney grills, but they're proportioned properly. They look really good on the car here. The Z4 did just get an LCI for 2023. This is a pre-LCI, so you might notice a few changes, 22 to 23, this being a 22. The 23 has some subtle styling updates, but by and large, pretty much carryover styling 22 to 23. So we're happy to have the 22 here for you guys to show, but overall, great looking front end. I really like how the headlights kind of come up almost into like the wheel well area, so pretty big headlight that looks really nice, juxtaposed to the long hood, which has these really cool indents in the hood that help to just give it a little bit of dimension to it, make it look a little more 3D as opposed to a flat hood. But overall, really good looking front end on the Z4 with a bunch of air intakes, bottom, left, and right. So great looking front end. If we want to come around to the side of the car, we can take a look at these wheels. They are a 19-inch wheel in the front, wearing a 255 35/19 size tire. All Z4s come with performance tires, and in this case, that is a Michelin Pilot Super Sport, which is a properly sticky tire. This is a 19. The smallest you can get in a Z4 is an 18, and all the other options are 19 inches. The wheel sizes, the diameters are not staggered. They're both 19s front and back, but the width of the tire is staggered, so it's a 255 in the front, wider in the back. You'll also notice that this car has red brake calipers. That is a standalone option. If you would prefer, you can get the brake calipers in blue. I personally am a big fan of the red ones. As you can see, this car has the 50th anniversary roundels. It's Black Sapphire Metallic, and it has that really cool Magma Red interior, so the red calipers work really nicely. As far as rear-wheel drive proportions, which we mentioned, you'll notice this is the front of the door line, and this is the front, or the center of the wheel, or like the axle point. This gap is really large in the Z4, and that is a trademark of a rear-wheel drive proportioned car. It makes it look like it's kind of set back on its haunches, which looks really cool, and it is a big gap on the Z4, which really contributes to its proportional beauty, so to speak. So all BMWs have rear-wheel drive proportions, but the Z4 has them in dramatic fashion, which looks really good. Long hood, set back passenger compartment, sort of almost like sitting over the rear wheels. So that's what we mean when we say rear-wheel drive proportions. But anyway, more styling elements right here on the side. You have a really big vent right there on the fender, and I can see through that vent, so it is functional. It's not just there for decoration. And as you can see, I can, fit my hand in there pretty well. So pretty substantial sized vent there, which looks really cool. As you can see, no M winged mirror caps on the Z4 like we see on some other M performance cars. Even though this is an M40, that design trait has not reached the Z4 yet. But interestingly, you do have 3 little kind of strakes on the side of the wing mirror there, which looks cool. Like I said, the Z4 is kind of quirky, has some interesting details that you don't see on other BMWs. I don't believe we see those on other BMWs, so that is an interesting thing to kind of check out. You can see that it connects obviously to this A-pillar here, which stops pretty abruptly. It doesn't extend too far over the cabin, which gives you a very nice open air kind of feel when the top is down. Of course, you're going to get that in a convertible, but the Z4 helps. Some convertibles, the windshield extends a little far, so you don't quite get as nice of an airy feeling. Z4 is not like that. Stops nice and short, so you have plenty of airflow and sun on you in the cockpit of the Z4 when the top is down. Continuing our way down the side of the car, you can see from that angle that the passenger compartment's not quite over the rear axles, but it's definitely set back further than it is on many other cars. That's, those rear-wheel drive proportions. Looks really cool, and it also gives us a chance to check out these back tires, which, like I said, are a 19 Michelin Pilot Super Sport, 275 wide in the rear compared to the 255 in the front. So it is a stagger setup. And of course, you have your painted red brake caliper there, just like you do in the front of the car. If we want to come around a little bit to the back, what I said about the headlight kind of continues here. So the taillight also extends inboard towards the cabin of the car, which I think looks really nice, makes it look more substantial, and then wraps around really nicely. Kind of sort of reminds me of the i8 taillight design, very vaguely. Obviously, it doesn't really look much at all like an i8, but the taillight design is definitely reminiscent of the i8, which I think is a good thing. I think the taillights were one of the best looking parts of the i8. So cool looking taillight, and it kind of wraps into or integrates nicely underneath this integrated duckbill spoiler, which looks really nice and is pretty prominent on the Z4. This comes up quite high off the standard line of the trunk, which looks really cool, gives it kind of an aggressive flare. You do see that you have 2 exhaust pipes, which are surrounding a really nice looking diffuser right here that has kind of 2 separate elements to it that looks really cool. Then your reverse light down low there as well. Another thing that I like about the Z4 is the badge. It's a much more stylized badge than what you get in a standard BMW model. Not quite the same font as like what you would see 330i or X5 written in a normal car. It's more stylized, a little bit more interesting, kind of funky looking, which looks really cool. It is finished in that cerium gray type copperish finish, and then you have your standard M40i badge over there on the right. While we're back here, why don't we take a second to take a quick listen to an exhaust clip, which you guys can listen to now. So as you heard, the Z4 sounds pretty good. Paired with the B58, the M40i sounds really nice. Has a pretty classic straight six sound to it. Sounds really cool. But all that stuff said, that's going to do it for the exterior styling of the Z4. Overall, really good looking car, but let's hop in the trunk and we'll take a look at that practicality element. And of course, we will hop in the front seats and go over what is going on in the passenger compartment as well. All right, so around back of the Z4 is, of course, where we'll find the trunk. You can pop it with a little electronic popper that's under there. And as you can see, the Z4 being a small car, two-seater, roadster body style, the trunk is not huge, not like something you would see on a 3 Series, but considering the size of the car, it's actually surprisingly roomy back here. We actually just had a client in to test drive the Z4, and he was concerned about fitting a set of golf clubs in there. We had a staff member with golf clubs, and we were able to fit a pretty large golf bag with clubs in the back of the Z4, so that is definitely important. Overall, definitely a usable trunk space. Over here on the right, you have a little compartment where you can find your fuse box and your tow hook cover and things like that. But overall, definitely a usable trunk with a separate little net over here on the side. And if you want to come back into the trunk, I'll show you guys one thing. Let me go ahead and close up our fuse box cover. If we look in the back here, pardon the maybe weird angle here with my reach, but you can see there's a little door that we can open. And if you flip it, if you heard that click, it magnetically sticks to the back of the trunk wall. And now let me walk around to the passenger compartment. You guys can stay there. And I'll open up this little door. And as you can see, we have a little pass-through here. That is helpful if you want to fit a long club, like a driver or something, or some skis. A longer item in the back of the Z4, BMW gives you that little pass-through, which is super convenient. Also really well engineered to have that little door magnetically stick to the back of the trunk wall so it doesn't flap around and get in the way of your stuff. But you can obviously reach in and close that up really easily. I'll show you how I opened the other compartment in the interior. Speaking of the interior, let's wrap up with the trunk. Overall, perfectly usable trunk for a 2-seat roadster. If you have 2 people in the car, you're going on a weekend trip and you want to fit both luggages in the back, you can definitely get away with that in the Z4. So that's it for the trunk. Let's go ahead and take a look at the interior. All right, so here we are inside of the Z4. If you are an avid watcher of the BMW Morristown YouTube channel, you might notice that this is a little different camera angle than what we usually do for the interior. That's because the Z4 doesn't have any back seats like pretty much every other BMW model does. So played around with the angles here. Hope it works out okay. But let's talk a little bit about the Z4 interior. But before we get into the kind of driver focused stuff, I do want to point out to you guys that pass-through compartment that we talked about. The latch for that is right here. So you can see there's a little latch you can pop down. And what's interesting is, here's the case for our microphones. You can actually kind of use it as storage if you want to stow something back there, if you're not using it as a pass-through, which is a nice little trick, because the Z4, being a little bit of a smaller car, doesn't have quite as much interior storage volume as you would expect from something like a 3 Series. The map pockets in the doors are not quite as large. The center console doesn't have any immediately accessible cup holders. For that, you want to open up your center console here, and if you have a drink, you're sacrificing your armrest. But you do have 2 cup holders in there. You also have a little bit of storage that is netted behind the seats here, as you can see, so you can definitely stow some things back there. But overall, you know, the Z4 is a small 2-seat lightweight roadster. It's a sports car through and through. So practicality is sacrificed very slightly for that, but you do still have a mat pocket. It's just a bit smaller. You still have cup holders. They're just not quite as accessible. So perfectly usable interior space for 2 people, but don't expect like 3 Series practicality of a Z4. obviously. Not that most people would, but just something to point out for people that might not be as familiar with the BMW Z car lineup. Otherwise, we talked about the Z4 being a little bit quirkier, so to speak, a little bit more unique compared to other BMW models. That's something that you'll notice. For one, with these seats, you can see that they are a one-piece with an integrated headrest, which looks really cool, especially trimmed in Magma Red, as this one is. You have that cool little inlet in the back of the seat back and some diamond stitching up top. Really, really good looking seat. And speaking of the seats, very comfortable. They have adjustable side bolsters, lumbar support, extendable thigh support, and boy, is this a comfortable seat. I'm really surprised at how comfortable the seat is for how supportive and kind of sporty it looks. Really nice place to sit. Other ergonomics, both armrests are at the same height. Steering wheel feels really nice. It's the standard M Sport steering wheel that you get in M and M Sport models and M Performance models in the BMW lineup, which feels really good. So ergonomically, the Z4 is really nice. The driving position is definitely unique compared to other BMW models because you look out over a longer hood than what you might be used to, and you're sitting further back in the car than what you might be used to, again, in a four-door car or even a four-seat car like an M4 Coupe. Is obviously a four-seat car, but it's two doors. Even in something like an M4 or a 430 Coupe, you're sitting further forward. You're not as close to the rear axle. That contributes to both the driving position and like the feel of the car when you're in it. It also contributes to the driving dynamics of the car and the driving experience of the car. The Z4 is an absolute blast to drive, as BMW Z cars always are. And a lot of that has to do with the driving position and the way that the car is engineered, the way things are proportioned and things like that. But anyway, let's get back to the interior. So as I said before, and as I said many times, the Z4 is kind of unique. Another way you see that is in this sort of angular door card that you see. It kind of goes up and down, and the door handles are at an angle, as are the window locks, as well as the seat memory buttons. That's a unique thing for BMW. That is exclusive to the Z4. Same with the center console here. It's a split opening center console, and it has that kind of same angularity here at the top portion. The center console has a similar thing at the bottom, and all those sort of interesting, unique design elements to the Z4 that you don't get in other BMWs. They definitely go out of their way to make it stand out from other models, being a car that's not shared on any chassis with anything else, that's kind of standalone in the BMW lineup. You do, speaking of storage and things that are kind of unique, you have something right down here in the center console to store a phone. You have a wireless charging pad and some storage, as well as a USB and 12 volt. And you can open and close that up as you wish, and you have that unique little Z4 logo there. As far as the operating system, it is running iDrive 7, which is the standard operating system in most current BMWs. We are transitioning into iDrive 8, but the Z4 carries on with iDrive 7. Of course, touchscreen with wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, and it can be controlled by the iDrive knob down there in the center console as well. The gauge cluster screen is, of course, what is standard with iDrive 7 cars. It is a bit smaller in the Z4, which I personally like. It kind of reminds you that you're driving like a smaller, sportier car. You have those nice tight gauges, which looks really cool. And of course, they change based on sport, comfort, and Eco Pro mode. So the gauges are cool to see in the Z4 as well. Other than that, that does kind of wrap it up for the things that are unique to the Z4. You have a storage compartment over here on the left underneath the headlight controls, which you'll see in some other BMWs. Headlight controls are carryover, as are the wiper stalks, climate controls, as well as radio preset buttons. So you have a lot of things that are unique to the Z4, but it will also feel very familiar BMW if you're somebody that has been in a modern BMW and that is familiar with modern BMWs. So that is going to do it for the interior of the Z4. Overall, it's a really great place to be. One of my favorite BMW interiors at the moment, just because of how unique and fun it is and how BMW kind of went out of their way to style it in a way that was unique to the Z4 and that wasn't found in many other models. But that is going to do it for the interior. Let's hop outside and we'll wrap up with our final thoughts. All right, so that is going to do it for our walk around and overview. with the 2022 BMW Z4 M40i. Really hope you guys enjoyed checking out the Z4. It's one of my favorites in the BMW lineup. It's just such a unique and cool car that follows that classic sports car BMW Roadster formula, which is rare nowadays. Not too many cars like the Z4 left on the road in our modern world of crossovers and EVs, so it's cool that BMW is still devoting time and money to cool cars like the Z4. But that's going to do it for this one. If you guys have any questions about the Z4, suggestions for future videos, or questions about anything BMW in general, please drop those down in a comment below. Follow us on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at BMW of Morristown. And please like this video as well as subscribe to the channel if you think we deserved it. Thank you guys so much for watching. That's going to do it for this one, and we'll see you in the next one.